Tyler got his internet figured out.
Kind of. We hope.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Now that we're streaming, it might be a little different. But I ran a little hacker man internet diagnostic, and it said I have fast internet. So
I don't know about that. I would beg to differ from Tuesday, but we'll just take things as they come and knock all this heavy hitting stuff out of the way first. But I'm drinking my usual, kind of it's become my staple, my favorite drink, my Makers and like apple cider shit pretty much. And then you're drinking
it's Wicked Grove hard cider rosé. So full disclosure, I'm at my girlfriend's apartment, and before the show started, I said, Jenna, do you have any drinks I can have? And she said, yeah, I have these really bad ciders, and you can have some if you want. Not great, but it gets the job done.
That's true. I was gonna give you shit, and then I was like, oh yeah, you're at your girlfriend, so
yeah.
I shouldn't expect any like hard whiskey or anything crazy.
I mean, yeah, I'd be surprised. But hey, we're back another week. The AP Top 10, a little different. Not super different, but Oklahoma did lose finally, which we've both been clamoring for God knows how long. Finally.
Round of applause for somebody for finally finishing off Oklahoma. We kind of talked about it being Baylor. Like it was always like every time they narrowly escaped against one of these scrub teams, it was like, okay, well, they still have to play Baylor. They still have to play Oklahoma
State.
Yeah, Iowa State.
Oklahoma State.
So. Yeah, I mean, so they could easily lose 2 more games. I mean, the pressure's not on for us as Oklahoma haters anymore because they've already lost and they're not going to make the playoffs, barring any absolute madness with this year, you never really know. But
yeah,
they finally lost. I was sitting there checking my phone, just waiting for the Oklahoma comeback, and it just never happened, thankfully.
Oh my gosh. Did you see the final play of the game? Then
yeah, they stormed the field, didn't they?
Yeah, so the fans stormed the field, and there's still like a second left on the clock with the timeout, and then they had to usher all the fans off the field, and all the Oklahoma players had already went to the locker room, and they had to like drag 11 players back out from the locker room, and then Baylor kicked a field goal while up like 2 touchdowns or something with 1 second left on the clock. So the explanation behind that is like the third tiebreaker in the Big 12 is point differential. So they said if we can, increase our odds, we might as well. But still, I think that it's ridiculous kind of that the refs made Oklahoma come out of the locker room and like finish up the game. I think at that point, the refs should have just called the game. It was out of reach for Oklahoma, and like the fans were already on the field, and the refs like had the power to stop the game if they wanted to. I think they would have been within reason to just say, okay, it's over. Like there's no point.
Yeah, it didn't matter, but I thought it was funny how Lincoln Riley was just absolutely pissed about it, and I was like, man.
Well, I would be too. Like their fans stormed the field before the game was over, and then you still like the other coach makes you trot out guys again when the game's already over just so he can kick a field goal to give himself like a 0.001% boost in making the playoffs or something. Like I'd be kind of pissed as well, especially after like, Caleb Williams not having a great day. Like people were heralding him as like the next coming of like a great quarterback, and kind of showed like, oh, once he played a good team, he wasn't that great. He got benched for Spencer Rattler.
You mean Heisman quarterback Caleb Williams after 6 weeks played a poor game and we're shocked?
Heisman quarterback who had like 150 combined yards against Kansas and was still somehow in the Heisman discussion. Yes.
And a game that they easily could have lost as well.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say that I think that whole point differential excuse is kind of bullshit. And some of it is that they just kind of wanted to win by a couple more points and just to rub it in Oklahoma's face, which I don't blame them. But yeah, Oklahoma lost, thankfully. Could easily lose a couple more games. And then we're kind of talking about Oklahoma, and I wanted to get your thoughts about these Lincoln Riley rumors that he might go to LSU. I think it's all just smoke, and I don't think there'd be a real good reason for him to go to LSU. I mean, I guess in the long run, he would probably, give himself a better chance of winning a national championship just because you can get better talent at LSU probably than you can at Oklahoma. But Oklahoma has been in the conversation multiple times for potentially winning a national championship.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma is like close enough to LSU in like nowadays. Oklahoma's a pretty big name college football program. Like it's always generally in the top like 10 recruiting and always generally in like top 5 preseason polls. So I think to kind of quote like Jimbo Fisher as well, he was linked to LSU as well. Why would he go out there and recruit such a great recruiting class only to leave and play against them once a year? You know, same thing for Oklahoma with them moving to the SEC. Why would Lincoln Riley put in all this work to build Oklahoma up to a great program and then leave just to face Oklahoma every year? You know, so I kind of see it as like if he expresses any interest, it's kind of similar to Lane Kiffin in the Miami job for me, where he's leveraging that for a pay raise. And I don't think it's anything more than that. Like Lane Kiffin's like, hey guys, I might definitely go to Miami if they offer me the right contract, unless Ole Miss pays me like a fat extension. So
It's kind of a lateral move because I mean I think both of the programs are kind of in similar spots right now. Oklahoma's in a better spot, like I said, but long term, I think LSU would be a better call, and they
mhm.
might throw a lot more money at him. But I mean, they're already Oklahoma's already joining the SEC, so I think they'll already get a lot better at recruiting, and they'll start kind of getting those SEC guys just purely from, when you're going to recruit players being like, "Hey, we're not in the Big 12 anymore. We're joining the SEC. We're joining the best conference. Like, you want to come here and compete against the best players and improve your draft stock so that you can, go on to the next level and make millions of dollars. Like, this is the program you want to come to." I think it'd be one thing if Oklahoma was staying in the Big 12 and LSU, who's, already firmly in the SEC, is in the SEC. But I
Mhm.
think because Oklahoma is joining the SEC, I think it's just kind of like a pointless move.
The more like these coaches get linked to the LSU job, the more it's kind of reminded me of like Auburn last year, where they got rid of Gus and they were linked to like a bunch of big name head coaches. And everyone was like, "Oh, Auburn's going to get like an amazing coach. We're going to get this great coach and be really good." And they got like a pretty good mid-major coach, but not like any of the huge names you saw floated out there, right? Like, and I feel like it's going to be the same for LSU. They're linked to Jimbo Fisher. They're linked to pretty much anyone who
With a pulse.
isn't, yeah, who isn't named like Ryan Day or Nick Saban at this point, or like Dabo Swinney. And so, and I think Dabo might have even been removed at one point for some reason. So, and then I feel like they're just going to end up with like a coach from, I don't know, like a random a random like pretty good school, but not like an elite coach. And
I think
okay.
I was just gonna say that the obvious answer for that job at LSU, I think, would be Billy Napier, who's the coach for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns right now. I mean, his name keeps coming up with basically any coaching spot that comes open. It's always, he's one of the names that is drawn to the program. But
Mhm.
also with Virginia Tech firing their head coach Justin Fuente, I know that some people think that Billy Napier might go there, or Shane Beamer. I'm going to be honest with you. I wish Pete Golding would just up and leave and go take that LSU job, but I don't think they're stupid enough to
Yeah.
do something like that. Even
When
though
they're
I think
linked
he's
to
from Louisiana.
well, they're like linked when you're linked to those big name people and stuff. I feel like you at least have to get a head coach, right? Or your fans are going to be pretty mad, especially with the negative connotation that Pete Golding has. I think Pete Golding, if he would ever go to a school like LSU and be a head coach, like who knows? He could be a good head coach at somewhere like LSU. But I feel like he needs at least a stepping stone college first, right? Like he's not Sark, right? Like Sark got a big deal because he was a really good positional coach, like a really good coordinator. I think it's more like I don't know, like Butch Jones after becoming an analyst for
The
us.
Saban School of Coaching.
Yeah, after he went to the Nick Saban School of Coaches for coaching for coaches that can't coach good, he like what he went to like Middle Tennessee or something like that, and to
Yeah,
try to
he
like
did.
rehab his image. And so I think it oh, sorry, Arkansas State. That's where he went.
Same
And
thing.
I think someone like Pete Golding would kind of have to do the same thing, where he kind of has a negative connotation around his name right now and would need to like prove himself at a smaller school first. I also did want to say real quick though, that we're talking about Lincoln Riley, and I will say the decision is a lot closer, like should he go to LSU and stuff, than if he went to the other Big 12 team joining the SEC, Texas. I think that if you're the head coach at Texas, that's one of the best like on paper jobs you could ask for, because it's a huge like name historic program and has like the biggest booster program in the world, so you can get literally whatever you want for your thing, for your program. And so I think that Oklahoma is a little bit more of a toss up, like leaving for LSU, but I don't think like if Sark was rumored, I don't know why they would want Sark after this year. He still has he's like 3 games over 500 now in his head coaching career all time. So it'd be cool if he like came back and became our offensive coordinator again. But
It would be beautiful, but I don't think Texas is gonna do that. And I think that they're gonna, have him for the long haul. As much as I'd
yeah,
love to have him, because God, Bill O'Brien has been the absolute worst, but he could leave too. Like, there's
yeah,
rumors that he could go to Virginia Tech, and man,
it's
best case Joe Will dream scenario, I would sleep like a goddamn king at night if Pete Golding took the LSU job because he's from Louisiana, and then if Bill O'Brien took that job, Virginia Tech, I would just be like, but the
yeah.
chances of those happening aren't very. I mean, Bill O'Brien could happen, but Pete Golding, he's 37 years old. I don't think LSU is gonna be like, oh, let's go hire this 37-year-old DC from Alabama who gets a whole lot of shit from people, and the fans aren't really high him. But I mean, also LSU stuck with Orgeron, and
Yeah.
aside from the national championship, I mean, if that didn't happen, the whole thing would have been an absolute dumpster fire because they've been horrible except for that year where they kind of just all the pieces fell into place for them.
I mean, what did Ed Orgeron have going for him, right? Like, besides winning a national championship, there was one thing I can think of that he had going for him for being the head coach at LSU, and he shares that with Pete Golding, right? Louisiana boy. Um, that was literally the only reason they kept him around at that point. And I don't know. The only thing, like maybe there's hope of Pete Golding leaving, is because Alabama coordinator positions are like Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts, where every single year there's a new guy that has to come in, right? Because they get poached or they like fall off the face of the planet or get
So
imprisoned in Azkaban or whatever.
so who's the Snape? Who's the guy that we should hire that just keep getting passed over for it?
Um, I don't know. Like
Not to put you on the spot, but I
I
like
was
that
thinking, like
analogy.
see, I was thinking someone like Sark, right, where he was for a year and then left, but people are kind of like he did really good at his job, but he got replaced by like the bureaucracy that is Texas
That's
hiring
true.
him. So
He should have stayed here. It never worked out when he went to the Falcons. It hasn't worked out so far at Texas. Like, he should just get himself a nice little house in Tuscaloosa, play a couple rounds of golf, Nick Saban, hang out on the lake, do all that shit. Like, he should just stay in Tuscaloosa because his best years as a coach have been when he's been at Alabama.
yeah, but so real quick, do you want to jump into the other top 10? We talked a lot about Oklahoma and Alabama,
Yes, because
but
we are notable Alabama fans and also
and
notable Oklahoma haters.
that's true. At
But
least
the
this
proof's in
year.
the pudding for Oklahoma.
No, I'll admit though, I've liked Oklahoma in recent years. It's just this year particularly, I was annoyed by the whole like push from Oklahoma fans going like, "Oh, like why does Alabama get ranked ahead of us? I thought wins mattered, not like how good you looked or whatever." So I was annoyed this year. But in the past, I've liked Oklahoma and I like Lincoln Riley. And but anyways, so Georgia's number one, of course. Alabama 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, Cincinnati 5, Michigan 6, Michigan State 7. Upholding the head-to-head literally doesn't matter. Notre Dame 8, Oklahoma State 9, and Wake Forest for some reason at 10. Even though I think they're going to lose this week. Um, So I mean, obviously, Wake Forest is a big elephant in the room. We can talk about that one. Why are they
Yes.
10?
I don't want to, beat the dead horse, but this year, aside from, I guess, the top 5, the rankings have been absolute crap. No, you know what? Not even the top 5. It's been Georgia and Alabama at the top, but 3 through 10 has just, I can't even count how many times, one team will jump up, the other team will jump down, and then that team will come back up, and it's been a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Wake Forest, I think if you look at the games they've played, they look like a top 10 team just because they have a explosive offense, but Purdue had an explosive offense and they played a good team last week and they got their asses beat. So, um, I think that, that 10 spot is kind of just a temporary placeholder from week to week. You talked about how you think that they're going to lose this week to Clemson. I really kind of tend to agree with you. I know that the line for that game is at 4.5, and we'll get to it later, but I think Clemson has kind of gotten their crap together, and they've been better on offense because their defense this year has been pretty solid, but their
yeah.
offense has been the problem. But I think their offense has woken up, and I think they've scored 30 points in the last 3 games.
Mhm.
And I think this is a game where Clemson bumps Wake Forest out of the top 10 and kind of proves that, yes, your offense might be solid, but one, who have you played? And two, like, is your defense able to go against a tough team? And I just don't think that's the answer for Wake Forest.
Well, even with their defense not going against tough teams, their defense has kind of been like a sieve this year. Like they just kind of let points flow through it, right? Like you look at their past couple games. NC State, they won by 3. NC State scored 42. UNC scored 58. Duke scored 7. That was a good game for Wake Forest, but Duke is bad. Army scored 56.
Running
Like,
that triple option.
Syracuse scored 37. Like Wake Forest went to overtime to win that one. Louisville scored 34. So their defense is like the first 3 weeks, it was pretty good. They gave up like 10 to 14 points per game. After that, man, they've just been getting gashed. And once you play against like an actually like pretty dang talented roster in Clemson, um, I just don't think their defense is going to hold up, and I don't think that their offense is going to be able to score 55 or whatever they needed to win against Clemson. So I think that they finally lose this week. My other big gripe, obviously, we brought it up last week. It stayed this week, so I have to bring it up again. Michigan being 6, Michigan State being 7, just literally does not make any sense. And every time the commissioner, so the commissioner is that has commented on it is the athletic director at the University of Iowa, and he has just time and time again made absolutely no sense in his explanations. He said something like, yeah, like head to head matters, except when it doesn't. And then like, yeah, like we thought that looks matter, but sometimes they don't. And like he literally just talked in circles and kind of avoided. But Michigan lost to Michigan State head to head, and they have the same record. And I mean, I could see it after this week if Michigan wins and Michigan State loses, because Michigan State has a real tough game coming up, against Ohio State. But up until this point, it does not make any sense to me.
Well, you know why that also doesn't make sense? Because if you're going to make that argument about head-to-head not mattering, and then you're going to put Oregon over Ohio State just
Yeah,
solely based on the fact that Oregon beat them like the second week of the year, which I think we can both agree now that, I think Ohio State is better than Oregon. If they played again, they'd beat them.
I agree.
But you can't have Oregon ahead of Ohio State because they beat them and then be like, oh, well, we know Michigan State beat Michigan, but we still think Michigan's a better team. No, that's crap. That makes no sense at all. I don't know what the deal is with them. I'm kind of every time these rankings come out, I get a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh god, like Alabama only beat LSU 20-14, like they're gonna put us at like 6 or something ridiculous. But thankfully, we have Alabama privilege.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. We have
Uh,
Alabama privilege, so nobody's going to bump us down too far. Fingers crossed. We could lose this week to Arkansas, and the whole thing's just out the window. But
yeah, it doesn't matter at that point anyway. But the whole thing that kind of bothered me about the week I was seeing, like, oh, Alabama privilege, was that same week that everyone was really harping on it. Literally, like the 3, 4, and 5 team won by like single digits as well. So it's not like
exactly.
anyone dominated and deserved to jump Alabama that week. So I don't know. But yeah, Georgia is looking good. They haven't really they don't have any more important games before the SEC championship game. I saw a lot of people complaining about Alabama playing a cupcake team last week, so I want to see all the complaining about them playing Georgia State or whoever this week. Georgia Southern, maybe. I think Georgia Southern. I haven't heard a peep about that, but
here's what I'll say about the Alabama Georgia presumed SEC championship matchup that's going to happen not too far from now. I saw this, or I said this, I tweeted this on Twitter. I still think that if Alabama played Georgia, I would give Alabama 3 points. Like, I would take them to win. I said 38-35. I know Vegas is going against me in that regard, and they have Georgia favored, but I think that Alabama has yet to play their best football, to play their A game. I think we're so used to seeing Alabama out of the gate just dominate, and then kind of towards the end of the year start not dropping off a little bit, but plateauing. And I think this team will continue to get better over the next couple of weeks, and they don't have to get like a bunch better. Like this week against Arkansas, they don't have to just blow the doors off Arkansas. I think it's just about little increments, like just getting a little bit better, like this much better each week. And then by the time you get to the SEC championship against Georgia, I think they'll be prepared. And I'm hard on Alabama as a fan, and I think a lot of people are, just because we're so used to pure dominance and pure success from this team. And I think it's fair to expect that because, with Nick Saban as the head coach, that's, what you expect. But I think that this team is, the best days are ahead for this team and this group. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of people in the SEC championship when they do play Georgia and end up beating them.
Ooh.
And that's my prediction.
Yeah. I think the team goes as far as play calling takes them, right? Like against Georgia, you can't waste possessions. You can't do like a run up the middle, wide receiver screen for a total of 3 yards.
The Bill O'Brien
have a
special.
possession like that. Yes. Like, so I parrot this stat all the time because it's super impressive to me. But every single team Georgia's played this year, save one, there's one team, every single team besides one, they held to their lowest scoring total of the entire season. And the one team they didn't hold to their lowest, I don't remember exactly who it was, but they scored 13 points. Their lowest was 10. So it was like a 3-point difference. So Georgia's really good. And, Alabama's offense is way better than any offense they've faced all year. But, man, you can't throw away possessions and out-talent them like you can a lot of rosters. Like, right? Like, they beat LSU this last week just because they had better talent. And they threw away, like, a lot of possessions. The offense only scored 20 points. It was not a pretty game. And you can't do that against Georgia, right? They're just too good. And so, I don't know. That game is super interesting to me, and Alabama has to win out. I mean, Alabama still has to win one of their next 2 games for it to even matter, because if they lose both of their next games and A&M wins out, I think A&M has the tiebreaker over us because they beat us and they make it instead. But it's weird to me to say that, like, if A&M makes it, they definitely don't stand a chance, even though they beat Alabama. So, I don't know. So let's talk about some interesting games that are showing up this week. We already talked about Wake Forest and Clemson. We both said that we think Clemson's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, Clemson's actually favored. If you're, the whole point of the show is betting. Clemson was favored by 4.5.
Bets and booze.
Bets and booze. So I guess Vegas kind of agrees with what we've been saying. So go us. A good
Damn
pick.
you, Vegas.
An interesting one. that like it's just kind of ridiculous to me. MSU, number 7 MSU, and number 3 Ohio State. MSU is the underdogs by 20.5 points.
Yikes.
That's a lot of points for a 4-point like ranking difference. And like I don't know. So I mean I'll spoil my betting slip a little bit, but
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Whoa,
No, I'm
whoa,
kidding.
okay,
I'm
fine,
just
no
messing with
spoiler.
you.
No, I was gonna say I picked MSU, Michigan State, to at least cover this because 20.5 points against the number 17 is quite a lot, right? Like that's the same spread that Alabama and Arkansas have, which is still I still think is a lot, but that's number 2 and number 21. We're talking 2 single-digit ranked teams that are only like 3 places away from each other. I think that Ohio State will win, but I think that that is a very generous spread.
I agree with you. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit before we went live. I know that last week the spread for the Purdue Ohio State game was like 21 points or 21 and a half or something along those lines. And Purdue was a good team, but defensively, you know, they weren't as good as Michigan State. And I think Michigan State will do a better job of keeping Ohio State in check on offense. And Mel Tucker, who just signed a massive extension for them, I think he's a very great coach, and he's shown that so far in his time at Michigan State. And I think this is only his first year or second year. He came from
I think it's the second.
Colorado, I believe, but he's done a great job with that program, and I think he'll have his guys ready for that game. And like, you know, we're not saying they're going to win the game outright, but I do think they keep it closer than, you know, the spread has it. But it is interesting though that Ohio State has played, you know, their biggest games at home this year. Michigan State at home, Penn State at home. I guess Purdue would be a bigger game at home. Like, I do find that kind of interesting, because if this game was in Michigan State in East Lansing, I think the spread would be a lot closer, probably like 14 or 15 points. But I think they do benefit from playing the shoe big time.
Well, even 14 or 15 points is still kind of a lot to me for how, like, you know,
it is a lot. It's
similar.
A crap
I mean, they
ton.
have the same record, right? So they're both 9-1.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just, I don't know. So we have number 12 Oklahoma favored by 3.5 over Iowa State. I personally think that Ohio State would definitely beat Oklahoma. I think that Iowa State's going to win. I mean, we kind of alluded to it all year. We've been talking about, like, oh, Oklahoma's not that great. They have like a gauntlet for their last 3 games. This is probably the most winnable for them. Like, I'm telling you right now, I'm picking Oklahoma State to win again next week. I don't think it's likely that they lose 3 in a row, but I still have to say that I think Iowa State's going to win because, right, they're 6-4, but they had a 2-point loss to Baylor. They had a 3-point, or they beat Oklahoma State by 3. They had a 3-point loss to Iowa State. So, and they beat Texas by a good deal. And I know, like, week to week, and like teams match up differently. They play differently every week, but you're over here, like, they only lost by 2 to the team that just beat Oklahoma. So they're at least on the same level. And I just think that Oklahoma hasn't impressed me all year. I will say it. I mean, we'll beat it into the ground. But now that they're playing, you know, they're playing Baylor, they're playing Iowa State, playing Oklahoma State, I think that they probably lose all 3 of them. But like I said, I'm scared to bet on this game. I think I did pick Iowa State money line here, but it does make me a little nervous because this is definitely the most winnable of the 3. Like, I think Oklahoma State will go out there and win pretty handily next week. So,
actually, I don't know. I kind of like Oklahoma in a bounce back game this week after losing a tough one last week to Baylor. I think that they'll bounce back. I mean, you do look at this and you see the 3.5 and you're like, well, I mean, If I had to take this, I'd probably take it at 3. You know, those half points make me pretty nervous. But I think Oklahoma, as much as we basically, trash talk them for being inconsistent and barely escaping teams that they should have beaten by a whole lot, I think they win this game. And I think Caleb Williams will have a pretty substantial game after playing poorly last week, as much as I hate to pick them. But
Yeah. And to go against my own argument, right? Like I'll play a devil's advocate. I did say that like Iowa State only lost by 2 to a team that beat Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma beat a team that beat Iowa State by 31 points. So it's not all the same, right? Like
exactly,
Texas
yeah.
Tech beat so anything could happen. And like I said, I will admit that this is probably the most winnable one. Like I would not be surprised at all if Oklahoma State just went out there and like took care, or not Oklahoma State, if Oklahoma just went out there and took care of business against Iowa State. But I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm taking Iowa State.
Respect.
Putting my Cyclones hat on.
Anti-Oklahoma, basically, every week.
Yeah, no, we pick against Oklahoma until we die this year. Number 5, Cincinnati is favored
This
by
one's
10.
tough.
Yeah, they're favored by 10 over SMU, so Southern Methodist University. And that's in Texas, right? We were talking about
Yes, it is. Mhm.
UTSA being the best Texas team. I don't know who would be better between SMU and UTSA. we sorry, before the broadcast we were talking about UTSA a little bit, and we joked that they might be the
tough
best
questions
team
are
in
being
Texas.
asked right now.
Oh yeah. So number 5 Cincinnati against SMU. I'm such a hater, right? Like I'm the biggest hater in the world, but I gotta stick my logic consistent. I'm not the playoff committee, so I will stick with the consistent logic that Cincinnati has not played anyone all year. They beat Notre Dame. That was a good win, right? But Notre Dame is like weird every year. I'm picking SMU to win. They've barely eked out some close wins they shouldn't. I think that SMU will pull the upset. I think that Cincinnati goes down, and I think that we're going to go down to probably one undefeated team after tomorrow, right? Because like the Georgia doesn't stand a chance. No, I'm just kidding. Because I think, spoiler alert, UAB is going to probably win as well. But what about you? What do you think about Cincinnati and SMU?
I was on your SMU train, but I'm just kind of looking at it and I'm like, it's similar to the Oklahoma game where I'm like, they barely beat Tulsa last week. I just feel like this is one of those games where they come out pissed off about last week and what people are saying about them, and they just beat bricks off SMU. The SMU has a great offense, but can't really stop a cold on defense.
Actually, sorry to step in real quick. We did miss a game. They played South Florida last week, USF,
Okay,
but they played it on like Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they beat the pants off South Florida.
I don't know. I'm kind of gone both ways on this. Like my initial thoughts, like I said, were that this is a big 10.5-10 point spread for Cincinnati to cover. But now I'm like, man, I mean, Cincinnati's a good team. I know SMU has that good offense, but Cincinnati also has a good defense. And in these games, I mean, you can say a lot about their offense fluttering, but their defense has still been pretty solid. Like they haven't given up too many points. It's just that offense that sometimes comes out a little bit flat. And so I think that defense with Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant with the C, Kobe Bryant, are supposed to be 2 of the top players in the country for the secondary. I think they'll make things hard on SMU quarterback Tanner Mordecai and force some turnovers, and I think they'll pull away from that game.
Yeah, honestly, the non-analysis bit real quick, I just want to say Tanner Mordecai is such a great football name. I don't know why. I just love that.
Mordecai.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking like the regular show. Maybe I'm thinking like Borderlands, something about Mordecai.
Morty from Rick and Morty.
Yeah, Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty.
We have our favorite game to talk about, number 21, Arkansas. Number 2, Alabama. Alabama's favored by 20.5 points. I'm going to that game. Woohoo! First game in over a year, and probably my last one for a while. but hopefully I'm not bad juju. I think that 20.5 scares me with the way that Alabama's handled some of the like better SEC teams, right? Like Tennessee has been better than expected this year. They were hanging right in there until the fourth quarter. LSU obviously hasn't been great, but they gave it with their heart. I think I saw it best where someone pointed out like every team plays their best against Alabama, right? Like Alabama's got to go in there and business as usual, win every week. But every other team in the country, it is a monumental game to play Alabama. So they will pull out all the stops, right? That being said, I'm not a fan like of Arkansas's game plan, I guess, and like KJ Jefferson is in general. He's a fine college quarterback, but it's just I think that when you're not a super accurate arm, it kind of hampers your team a little bit. And they have what was it? Was it Braylon Edwards or something? No, who am I thinking of? Their receiver that's really good.
Traylon Burks.
Traylon Burks. I don't know where I got Braylon Edwards from. I think he played at Michigan. But yeah, Traylon Burks is really good.
It's pretty easy to stop one player, though.
Yeah, exactly. And imagine how good he'd be if he had like a super accurate quarterback, right? Like, so I don't know. Like watching Arkansas against Georgia, I was scared of Arkansas. Like when they started to pick up steam, like later in the year, I was like, oh man, they're going to be a tough game. But then I saw them play against Georgia, and they ran the ball up the middle almost every single drive, forced a lot of quarterback runs even when they weren't going anywhere. So the game plan is simple, right? Like if you shut down their run, you win the game. The only problem is that Alabama hasn't been the best at doing that this year. So I still think Alabama wins. I am staying away from betting this one though. Like
it's weird too because Arkansas beat the brakes off of Texas A&M early in the year, and we lost to A&M. So it's just it is weird. I'm looking at it right now on our book. It's the first half spread is Alabama minus 12.5, and I'm kind of curious. Do you think Alabama could have? Let's say if I bet on this, I bet on it at 12, like a 12-point lead going into half, or would you stay away from that as well?
I think that that's probably better than full game 20.5, honestly, just because Alabama, like full game spreads are kind of hard because they love to, if they're winning by a lot, they love to take out their starters.
Exactly.
And they also kind of like take their foot off the gas and play just to win the game once they've got a sizable lead. I think that, the first half, you're not going to play conservative. So I could easily see them being up 2 touchdowns or more going into halftime. I like being up 12 at halftime more than I do winning by more than 20.5 points.
Okay, so I'm asking you right now because I'm looking at it. Do I take it at 12.5 or at 12? Do you think that's a safe bet?
I think it's like if you're dead set on betting on the game, either way, I think it's probably safer to bet on them like halftime. I'm not I think that Alabama will go out there and win. Like at least put on a show in the first half. I mean, I think they're definitely going to win the game, but the only reason I would be hesitant like the 20.5 spread is because, like I said, they take their foot off the gas at the end of games just to get to the next one. And especially with only having 2 like scholarship running backs that are healthy now, like I think you're definitely going to want to try to just end the game without injuries if you can, if you're winning by a good event. So
yeah, I don't know. Like last time I took them first half because I'm staying away from them for the spread because recently when I bet on them in the spread, they always screw me over. But last time I think it was the A&M game? It might have been the A&M game. I took them to cover in the first half and they didn't.
yeah, they were losing, right? Going into half.
Yeah, I'm a little bit anxious because I know it's tough the first half because you have to be kind of firing on all cylinders. And it's also, we see a lot of teams sluggish in the first half and then come out in the second half and play a completely different game.
I will say
that makes me nervous.
I think that A&M's defense matched up better with Alabama than Arkansas did. I think that A&M and Georgia were probably, and like LSU to an extent, they all matched up so well because they had a really good defense that could shut down like the run game, right? Like we had 6 combined rush yards or whatever that game.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that Arkansas has a fine defense, but they're not like elite like A&M or even LSU or Georgia. So I think that um, I think that it's a safer bet than like the A&M game. Um, so we have one more written down, and I know that you're a fan of Oregon, but I wanted to actually just real quick because I'm gonna forget it if I don't mention it right now. Number 15, UTSA and UAB. I don't know the spread on the. I think it's 4.5 points. UTSA undefeated Roadrunners meet are favored by 4.5 points, and I'm picking UAB. I am. I think there's going to be one undefeated team left after tomorrow. I think Cincinnati and UTSA both lose. UAB is 7-3, but hear me out. Their losses are to Liberty, who's they're pretty good at times. They've been up and down this year, but they have Malik Willis, who was first round projected quarterback, so they can hang with anyone. They also lost to Rice, which, bad loss. Rice isn't great. I'll give it to you. Their other loss was to Georgia, who they played week 2. And spoiler alert, everybody's lost to Georgia that's played them. So I don't think that's anything to be ashamed by. You're just outclassed there at that point. And I think that other than that, I mean, they hung 52 on LA Tech. They won 34-0 against Southern Miss, who, by the way, UTSA won by like a single touchdown. It was a pretty close game. That was the game I was telling you about earlier. Frank Gore Jr. actually led the team in passing yards that game.
That makes me feel old.
I know, right? His dad's like fighting in a prize fight now against Nate Robinson, I think, from the
Darren
NBA.
Williams, I think, or something.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah,
completely not relevant, but also relevant at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of important. It is Darren Williams. I knew it was a former NBA player. But so yeah, anyway, I'm picking the Roadrunners to lose. Sad meat noses, but
meep meep.
Yeah, alas, 10-0 is a lot better than I think they were definitely expected to be so far. So now we can talk about Oregon and Utah. Number 3, Oregon is favored by so the line shifted actually. Number 23, Utah is actually favored by 3 points.
I love this. I'm 100% not only taking the points on this, but I'm pounding the money line. I'm taking Oregon to win outright because earlier this week I had seen that it was Oregon -3, and I was like, oh, Oregon will win by more than 3. And then today I saw it before the show, ESPN, it was Utah was favored by 3, and I was like, oh, this is easy. Like, I know a lot of people, this is a trendy pick for Oregon to lose to Utah because Utah's a tough team, yada, yada, yada. Even though Oregon lost early to Stanford this year, I think they're a completely different team. I think they, with Anthony Brown, have figured out how to run the ball. Anthony Brown is not making as many mistakes as he was before. Physical defense, full of explosive playmakers. I mean, they did lose Micah Pittman this week, but he hadn't really been a factor for them, and they've got a bunch of other 5 stars in addition to the talent that they have. So I think this is kind of a no-brainer pick for me, but also with my bias because I'm an Alabama, Penn State, Oregon fan, I'm part of the reason why I'm so high in Oregon, but I think I don't really have much of a file on Utah. I know they're a competitive team, but I don't think they match up talent-wise with Oregon, even though talent doesn't always matter the most. I think in this game, it could be close for a little bit, but I think Oregon with just a lot more talent than Utah is going to find a way to kind of pull away from this game.
Yeah, and I'll say it as someone who doesn't have a Oregon any stake in Oregon.
A duck in the fight.
Yeah, I don't have a duck in the pond.
That was better. Fuck.
Yeah, thank you. I've been down on Oregon. I don't know if they're the number 3 team in the nation, but they're just a better team than Utah, and they're a pretty good team this year. I think that I love watching Oregon. I love their jerseys. They're so nice.
They're so fun too.
But Utah's played 2 ranked teams this year, and they have 3 losses. You want to guess who 2 of their 3 losses are to? The only good teams they've played. So, I mean, and they lost to number 23 San Diego State and number 14 BYU. This is the AP poll, mind you. So it's a little different than the college football ranking. You just quick Googling. And then they also lost to Oregon State. And then, like, you look at who they beat, right? Like, yeah, they beat Stanford, who beat Oregon, but that's a different Stanford and this is a different Oregon. Like, I think that Oregon's going to go out there. And if I were you betting on this game, 100% Oregon is going to win by more than 3 points. So I think Utah being favored by 3 is very questionable. And stuff like this, and then stuff like the Michigan State game spread, I just wonder, like, what does Vegas know? What do they know that this is
what do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what am I missing here? But I mean, Oregon, they've been on a tear recently. They lost in overtime to Stanford. But other than that, they've gone out there and taken care of business, including a win over Ohio State, which is one of the most impressive wins resume-wise that any team in the country has. I think A&M might be the only one that has them beat, right? Like Texas A&M has a win over number 2 Alabama. So that's a very impressive resume. But as far as like resumes go, I think that Oregon might have the most impressive like single win. And I think they're going to go out there and just kind of stomp Utah. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. So,
yeah, I mean, I was more nervous about Oregon facing Washington State last week than I am about them facing Utah this week. And I guess that we kind of just went through them, but I'm going to give you my bet slip. And this is kind of something new that I want us to start doing. So I'll give you my bet slip, and then you can tell me which one of the games that I have on here that makes you nervous and kind of maybe talk me out of picking.
I got you.
So I have Cincinnati -10 against SMU. I have Michigan State. I got it at +20.5 against Ohio State. I have Oregon to win outright with the money line. I have Oklahoma -3, and then I added Alabama -12.5 for the first half spread.
So, of all those, like, I mean, I told you I think that Cincinnati's going to lose, and I think that Oklahoma's going to lose. But I do also think that those are more unlikely. I think if any of those would make me nervous, it'd be the Alabama one, just because they've been so up and down this year. Like, they pull out the win 9 out of 10 times, right? Like, they lost to Texas A&M. They end up winning, but they've been so inconsistent and no one really knows how they're going to start. So I think that I've hammered home tonight, like, first half is a lot better of a bet than like full game. But I think if anyone made me made me nervous, it would be that. Or like I said, I mean, I think that Cincinnati's bound for a loss, and I think that Oklahoma's going to lose. But that's not based on like any hard data or anything like that. That's just me watching the teams having played this year and going,
that's your brain. And then because like I agree with you, my brain's like don't take Oklahoma, but my gut's like Oklahoma is gonna win this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I agree with you. The only one that kind of makes me nervous is the Alabama one, because first half, I mean, if it hits, it hits. Like, it has to hit. Second half, it's like, okay, if they come out sluggish in the first half, they could still find a way to win by 21 points. Yeah. But first half, it's like you gotta have your crap together, or else like the whole thing's just messed up. And you know me, I was complaining about the parlays, and then I turn around and I can't resist them because it's so much potential money. So I get real analytical about each one of these games, and which one of them is most likely to mess up the whole parlay.
And I will say that's also just a difference in mindset between me and you. Like, if you're betting for parlays,
you're smarter than me.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you're betting parlays and betting like smart money in some of those games, like Oklahoma probably is the smart pick, and SMU losing probably is the smart pick. But I like to go for a lot of upsets that I think are potential, and so that's why. But I like I said, I do think that Oklahoma's probably the betting man's pick. I just so I'll go through mine real quick. Actually, I also like Michigan State covering. It's +20 right now on DraftKings. I don't know exactly what it was at.
20.5 on our book, or it was at 19. It was at 19.5. I bumped this to 20.5, so I'm losing money, but
same thing. But I'd take it either way, covering. And then I think that Iowa State's going to win outright. I think that Clemson will cover. It's 4.5. I think that Clemson's going to win pretty handily, actually. And let me scroll through here. Sorry, I didn't write it down. I just have it like it's I'll know it when I see it. Which ones I picked.
You're good.
SMU winning outright over Cincinnati, which is kind of a hot take, and UAB beating UTSA were my choices. So lots of money line. I'm a money line guy. So any of those that you particularly don't like, or
no, I mean I kind of agree with you on most of those. You actually just talked me into taking Clemson -4. It's at -4.5 in our book, but I hate those half numbers, so I just took it at 4.
Why do you hate half numbers?
Because I just feel like it's harder to hit with the half than it is with like a whole number. So I
like the halves
unless I'm picking the underdog. So Michigan State, it was at 19.5. I got it to 20.5 because that just increases the chances.
Yeah, I don't like the potential of a push, so I don't mess with whole numbers. I always have to have it a half.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, I agree with you. For the most part, obviously, we kind of differ on the Cincinnati pick because I've talked myself literally in the last hour into taking Cincinnati -10. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I agree with you. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so I think that's all I have.
That's all I got too. So usually I'm done with my drink by now, but
same. So. This is really bad. Woohoo! Wow, we did it.
What a great thumbnail. All right. But thank you all for watching, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we make some money this weekend. We're not experts, but I've actually been very bad the last couple of weeks with my stuff. So that's why I'm taking a bit of a conservative route this week by taking Cincinnati.
See, I was pretty bad, and then I won it all back just betting on the Vikings.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm trying to tell myself go with the team that's favored for a reason. So
yes.
But yeah, thank you all for watching, and hopefully we make money, and we will see you sometime next week. I don't know, Tuesday. Yeah. Peace.